In 2012, three sisters from Atlanta stood on the White House lawn and sang about rising above fear, while kids ran past with Easter baskets and Secret Service agents kept watch from the shadows. And if you'd asked anyone in that crowd, they would have told you the McClain Sisters were about to own the next decade. They had Disney Channel in a chokehold, harmonies so tight they could make gospel singers weep, and a look that was equal parts church girl and cool kid. The kind of clean, black girl magic the industry loves to say it wants but rarely knows how to sell. China was the face everybody knew from A.N.T. Farm. Sierra and Lauryn were the voices that made the whole thing work, and together they had a song in a Disneynature movie, a record deal with Hollywood Records, and a stage at the biggest house in America. But here's the thing about being three black girls who harmonize in a machine built for solo stars and white teen pop. Sometimes the platform isn't the same as the plan. No album ever came, the label never pushed, and somewhere between State Fair stages, grief that hit too close, and a growing conviction that fame wasn't worth their peace, the sisters made a choice the industry didn't see coming. They walked. This is the story of the McClain Sisters, the girl group Disney loved to use but never quite knew how to keep. To understand why they walked, you have to go back to where it all started, a living room in Decatur, Georgia, where three little girls were learning to harmonize before they even knew what the industry was. Picture a modest family home in the early 2000s, gospel music floating through the kitchen, a cheap keyboard propped in the corner next to a couch that had seen better days. Michael McClain, their father, was a producer who believed in building things in-house, and their mother, Chantel, was a songwriter who knew that talent without structure was just noise. Sierra, the oldest, had the range. Lauryn, the middle sister, had the tone. And China, the youngest, had a voice that could punch through walls. Together, they sounded like church, tight, soulful, grounded in something bigger than a record deal. In 2005, a family friend who happened to be a music executive stopped by the house, heard them sing something casual in the living room, and did what good friends do when they recognize lightning in a bottle. He made a call. Within months, China was cast in Rob Hardy's film, The Gospel, with Sierra and Lauryn in supporting roles, and suddenly, the three girls who'd been singing for fun at home had a reason to take it seriously. They called themselves Thriii McClain Girls, recorded their first song, Silly Games, with their daddy producing and their mama writing, and started learning what it meant to be professionals before they hit puberty. By 2007, Tyler Perry had seen enough to cast all three of them as the James sisters in Daddy's Little Girls, and China landed a recurring role on his sitcom House of Pain as Jasmine Payne. They weren't famous yet, but they were working. Real film sets, real directors, real paychecks. More importantly, they were learning how to show up on time, hit their marks, take notes from adults who didn't care that they were kids, and still find time to rehearse harmonies in the car between takes. Their parents kept them grounded with chores and church and rules that didn't bend just because Tyler Perry knew their names. And that structure, that refusal to let Hollywood turn them into something they weren't, would end up being the thing that saved them later. By the time China turned 11, the three of them had already learned how to hit their marks on a Tyler Perry set, how to record in a home studio their daddy built, and how to harmonize so tight it sounded like one voice split three ways. All they needed was a platform big enough to let the world hear it. And in 2011, Disney came calling. Disney didn't just call. They rolled up with a contract, a soundstage, and a lead role on a brand new sitcom that was about to make China and McClain a household name. In June 2011, China was cast as China Parks, a musical prodigy attending a gifted program at a regular high school in a show called A.N.T. Farm. The role was tailor-made for her, smart, talented, a little quirky, and black in a way that felt natural instead of tokenized. Disney Channel promoted it hard, slotting it right into their Friday night lineup. And almost overnight, China went from that girl from Tyler Perry's show to the face plastered across lunchboxes, backpacks, and bedroom posters in suburban homes across America. She was 11 years old, and suddenly, the biggest entertainment company in the world had plans for her. But here's the thing, Disney does better than anybody. They don't just build stars, they build ecosystems. If you're on a Disney Channel show, you're also expected to record music for Disney soundtracks, appear at Disney events, promote Disney movies, and smile through Disney press junkets until your face hurts. And if you happen to have two talented sisters who can sing, Disney knows how to package that too. The McClain Sisters, no longer three McClain girls, because Disney needed something cleaner, were officially rebranded as the wholesome, harmonizing sister act tied to China's rising star. Picture the soundstage in 2011. Bright lights, candy-colored sets, a studio audience packed with kids who screamed on cue every time the applause sign blinked. China in costume as China Parks, hitting her marks between takes, while Sierra and Lauryn sat in fold-out chairs just off camera, watching their little sister become the center of gravity. Producers would remind China about a promo shoot after taping, or a soundtrack recording the next morning, or a meet and greet at a mall opening the following weekend. The schedule was relentless, the visibility was intoxicating, and somewhere in the middle of all that momentum, it became clear that Disney's investment was in China, and the McClain Sisters were the value add, the family-friendly bonus content that made the whole package even more marketable. Around the same time, Hollywood Records, Disney's in-house label that had launched Miley Cyrus, Selena Gomez, and the Jonas Brothers, signed the McClain Sisters to a deal that should have been the beginning of everything. They were tied into Disney's Friends for Change initiative, the company's feel-good campaign about environmental awareness and anti-bullying. And suddenly, the sisters weren't just entertainers. They were ambassadors for a brand that wanted to sell empowerment, purpose, and merchandise all at once. Disney had given them the keys to the kingdom, or at least a corner of it. But keys don't mean ownership, and in 2012, the sisters were about to learn the difference between being featured and being prioritized. The difference showed up fast. In March 2012, when the McClain Sisters stood in the massive atrium of the Mall of America, microphones in hand, staring out at a sea of kids holding homemade signs with their names on them. The air smelled like popcorn and sugar, the bass from their track Rise vibrating through the floor so hard you could feel it in your chest. Disney signage hung everywhere. Banners for Chimpanzee, the Disneynature film the song was tied to. Logos for Friends for Change plastered across every surface. Security barriers kept the crowd back, but the screams still cut through, echoing off the glass ceiling as the sisters, coordinated outfits, tight harmonies, smiles so bright they could have been CGI, delivered a performance that felt like a coronation. Rise officially dropped on March 23rd. The music video premiered on Disney Channel 2 days later, and just like that, the McClain Sisters weren't just China's backup singers. They were Disney's go-to black girl group for anything that needed to feel uplifting, socially conscious, and parent-approved. 3 weeks later, they were standing on the south lawn of the White House. April 9th, 2012. The Easter egg roll, one of the most visible family events in America, and the McClain Sisters were on the lineup. Secret Service agents in dark suits and earpieces watched from the sidelines. Kids ran past with baskets full of candy, and somewhere in the distance you could see the Capitol dome cutting into a cool spring sky. The surreal contrast wasn't lost on anyone. 3 girls who grew up singing in an Atlanta church, now performing gospel-trained harmonies that bounced off the columns of the most famous house in the country. For the sisters, it wasn't just a performance. It was proof that everything their parents had poured into them had been worth it. They'd made it to a stage most people only see on TV, singing a song about rising above fear, and it felt like the beginning of something unstoppable. Except it wasn't a beginning, it was a peak. Over the next year, Disney kept using them the way you use seasoning, just enough to make everything taste better, but never the main ingredient. They recorded Sharp as a Razor for the Shake It Up, I Love Dance soundtrack, which dropped in March 2013 and kept them in Radio Disney rotation. They showed up at Disney events, smiled for photo ops, did the press junkets, and every time fans asked when the album was coming, the answer was always the same vague corporate non-answer. Soon. We're working on it. Stay tuned. But behind the scenes, there was no album on Hollywood Records' calendar, no radio strategy, no plan to push them beyond the safe, controlled world of Disney Channel soundtracks and feel-good campaigns. Visibility isn't the same thing as investment, and the McClain Sisters were learning that lesson in real time. In December 2013, China sent out a tweet that felt routine at the time, but would turn out to be the first domino falling. A.N.T. Farm was ending after 3 seasons. No drama, no public fallout. Just a simple announcement that the show that had made her famous and given the McClain Sisters their entire Disney platform was done. For most people scrolling past, it was just another show wrapping up. For the sisters, it was the sound of a door closing, because without A.N.T. Farm, there was no built-in reason for Disney Channel to keep promoting them. No guaranteed soundtrack spots. No automatic ticket to the next Friends for Change campaign. And Hollywood Records, the label that had signed them with so much promise just a year or two earlier, suddenly had even less incentive to figure out what to do with 3 black girls who harmonize. Picture the conversation. Maybe it happened in a bland label office with framed gold records on the walls. Maybe it was a conference call with their parents on one end and an A&R rep on the other. Voices crackling through a speakerphone. Polite corporate language about different directions and exploring other opportunities. And no current plans for a full album release. The kind of meeting where everyone stays professional. No one raises their voice, and by the time you hang up, you realize you've just been let go without anyone actually saying the words. Years later, in interviews and YouTube commentary, the sisters would describe that era as very difficult, and they'd be careful with their words but clear about the subtext. Being 3 black girls who could sing their faces off didn't matter if the label didn't know how to market them, didn't believe there was a lane for them, didn't see them as worth the investment it would take to build something beyond Disney Channel filler. There was no scandal, no lawsuit, no public beef, just a quiet, structural failure where the machine that had platformed them decided they weren't profitable enough to prioritize. It's the kind of racism that doesn't make headlines because it's dressed up in spreadsheets and market research. So they did what their parents had taught them from the beginning. They went independent. On December 14, 2013, just days after the Hollywood Records chapter closed, the sisters dropped a lyric video for He Loves Me on YouTube under the simpler name McClain. No sisters attached. No Disney logo in sight. It was a declaration, we're still here, we're still singing, and we don't need you to do it. Independence sounds romantic until you're standing backstage at a regional venue, smelling soda syrup and stale popcorn, realizing the crowd tonight is a fraction of what Disney could pull with one tweet. June 29, 2014, House of Blues, Anaheim. The neon sign outside glowed against the night sky. Fans lined up in homemade shirts with McClain scrawled across them in fabric paint. And inside, the air was thick and sweaty in that way only a packed club gets. This was their first headlining show without Disney's name anywhere on the ticket, and it mattered. When the sisters hit the stage and the crowd screamed the words to He Loves Me, it felt like proof. Proof they could pull people on their own. Proof the fan base was real. But it was also a reality check, because the difference between a Disney-sponsored arena show and an indie club gig isn't just the size of the room. It's the size of the check, the budget for production, the number of zeros on the back end. That summer and fall, they hit the road hard. Wisconsin State Fair, Delaware State Fair, West Virginia, North Carolina, Ohio. York Fair, Six Flags Over Texas, Arthur Ashe Kids Day. Anywhere that would book them, they showed up. Picture rotating fairgrounds, Ferris wheels spinning behind a small stage, the smell of fried dough and cotton candy mixing with dust kicked up by hundreds of feet. Sound check over the distant screams of carnival rides, a mix of hardcore fans who'd driven hours to see them and random fairgoers just strolling past on their way to the corn dog stand. It was honest work, the kind of grind that separates people who love performing from people who just love being famous. They kept recording too, dropped The Holiday Song in December 2014, a Christmas track that extended their independent catalog but didn't chart anywhere that mattered. In 2015, Clip My Wings landed in a small film called The Sparrows, The Nesting and its Soundtrack, proof they could place music outside the Disney ecosystem. They put Feelin' Like up on SoundCloud, kept their social media active, kept showing their fans they were still creating. But behind the scenes, the math was getting harder to ignore. All three sisters had acting careers that were starting to demand more time, more focus, more travel. Sierra was booking roles that had nothing to do with the group. Lauryn was juggling her own projects, and China, the face everyone recognized, was getting offers that would pull her further into TV and film, and further away from the girl group grind. Between 2015 and 2019, the McClain Sisters as a unit faded into the background while each sister stepped harder into their own light. China landed Uma in Disney's Descendants 2 in 2017, a role that introduced her to a whole new generation of kids who'd never seen A.N.T. Farm. A year later, she was cast as Jennifer Pierce, aka Lightning, in the CW's Black Lightning, a superhero show that let her flex dramatic acting muscles she'd never gotten to use on Disney Channel. Sierra booked recurring roles on Empire, showed up in Netflix's Mindhunter, and eventually landed a spot on 911. Lone Star, building a resume that proved she didn't need the group to be taken seriously as an actress. Lauryn kept working too, quieter but steady, the kind of career that doesn't make headlines but pays bills and keeps you in the rooms that matter. They were all still close, still family, but the girl group that had once been their shared dream was now something they did when schedules aligned, which was almost never. And then, on July 6, 2019, Cameron Boyce died, 20 years old, sudden, unexpected, gone. For China, who'd worked with him on Disney projects and considered him a close friend, the loss hit like a freight train she never saw coming. In a 2021 Teen Vogue interview, she'd later say that Cameron's passing forced her to step back and ask herself what she was really doing, whether being tied up in working, and getting ahead was worth missing out on the things that actually mattered. Whether Hollywood's version of success was the same as God's. The answer she landed on was no. Over the next year, China started speaking more openly online about her Christian faith, posting scripture, talking about purpose over profit, hinting that she was building something with her family, a production company that would let them tell stories they believed in instead of just taking whatever roles paid the most. She wasn't bitter, wasn't dramatic about it, just clear. The version of herself that Hollywood wanted wasn't the version she wanted to be anymore. And if that meant stepping back from certain opportunities, turning down certain roles, prioritizing her spiritual life over her IMDb page, then so be it. In June 2020, while the world was locked down and everyone was reevaluating what mattered, the sisters re-emerged under a new name, Thriii. Not the McClain Sisters, not three McClain girls, Thriii, spelled like the number but pronounced like the word. A rebrand that signaled they weren't kids anymore, weren't Disney's wholesome ambassadors anymore, weren't trying to fit into whatever box Hollywood Records had failed to build for them a decade earlier. Their first single, My Sanity, dropped that summer, and if you listened close, you could hear everything they'd lived through in the lyrics. The pressure, the grief, the faith that had kept them standing when the industry tried to make them disappear. The production was simpler than anything Disney would have approved. The video was shot with warm lighting and minimal glam. Just three grown women in a home studio looking directly into the camera like they had nothing left to prove. The comment section told the whole story. We grew up with you. Y'all aged like fine wine. This is what healing sounds like. The fans who'd screamed for them at the Mall of America were adults now too, navigating their own grief and doubt and questions about whether the dreams they'd been sold as kids were worth chasing. Thriii wasn't trying to compete with whoever was topping the Billboard charts. They were offering something quieter, something that felt like a conversation between people who'd survived the same machine and made it out with their souls intact. Then, in October 2021, they did something brilliant. They went back. Calling All the Monsters, 2021 version, Feet Messenger, was a remake of China's 2011 Disney Halloween anthem, the song that had soundtracked a million trick-or-treat nights and TikTok throwback videos. The video leaned all the way into the nostalgia, throwback Halloween visuals, fog machines, plastic pumpkins, the three of them recreating choreography they'd done as kids, but with the winks and inside jokes of women who knew exactly how ridiculous and beautiful it all was. It wasn't trying to recapture the past. It was honoring it, claiming it, reminding the internet that those Disney-era moments belonged to them, not to the corporation that had used them and moved on. Today, if you search What Happened to the McClain Sisters on YouTube, you'll find essays with over 1 million views trying to solve a mystery that was never really a mystery at all. Channels like Black Femininity TV have spent 20 minutes dissecting their disappearance, framing it as some tragic Hollywood cautionary tale, when the truth is right there in the interviews China's been giving for years. She didn't fall off, she walked away. The algorithm loves a redemption arc or a downfall story, but it doesn't quite know what to do with three women who looked at the machine, weighed the cost, and decided their sanity was worth more than their visibility. People and Teen Vogue have profiled them, emphasizing the faith and family structure that kept them grounded when so many other child stars spiraled. Their story has become a case study in what it looks like when Black girls survive Hollywood by refusing to let it consume them. And the music? It never left. Calling All the Monsters still racks up millions of views every October, soundtracking Halloween playlists for a generation that grew up on Disney Channel and never forgot. Nostalgia keeps them visible even when they're not chasing it, even when they're focused on faith-based projects and family production plans that'll never trend on Twitter. The fan base is still there, older now, commenting things like, they chose peace over pressure, and this is what it looks like when you protect your spirit. The McClain Sisters didn't disappear because the industry broke them. They stepped back because they refused to let it. And maybe that's the legacy that matters most. Three Black girls who sang at the White House, toured state fairs in the heat, buried a friend, found God, and still had the courage to harmonize on their own terms. Not because Disney told them to, not because a label saw the lane, but because their parents raised them to know that some things, faith, family, and the sound of your sister's voices blending with yours, are worth more than all the stages in the world.